looking at birthright citizenship very seriously. It's frankly ridiculous. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
The soil has always been sacred to Americans, and breaking this bond between citizenship and land is extremely dangerous. According to our law, if you are not born with Italian blood, you're not Italian.
Under an EU agreement, refugees can only apply for asylum in the first country of arrival, which is often Italy. But Doctors Without Borders say 80% don't want to stay there.
As soon as he took office, Donald Trump immediately signed an executive order blocking citizenship by birthright, also known as IUS SOLI. For the time being, judges have suspended this procedure, but he will certainly try again. Here in Italy, we have exactly the citizenship law that the American administration is trying to apply in the US, the so-called ius sanguinis, or citizenship by bloodline. But what are the main differences between the two, and above all, which one is the best? Today we're gonna find out, but before that, please, if you like my work and research, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification button, and now let's dive in. A few months ago we discussed, and I link the video in the description down below, the Italian citizenship system, also known as ius sanguinis, or law of the bloodline, and we also analyzed why it has been in place for nearly 200 years. Basically, in this system, the only way to obtain citizenship at birth is to have at least one Italian parent. There is no other way. Being born or not on Italian soil does not account for anything. In fact, in my country, unlike what happens in the US, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are born in Italy, but they're not Italian citizens. In my school, there are dozens of students who were born and raised in Italy who speak only Italian, but they're not Italians by citizenship, with all that entails, with all the consequences of that. And this kind of situation is exactly the dream of Donald Trump's new administration. Why? Because the Italian citizenship system discourages both new arrivals, but especially the desire to be in the new country long term. Let me explain. If I am a young person who wants to migrate to another country in search of a better life, perhaps to start a family, I will hardly want to settle permanently in a country where my children, born in that nation, will have to wait decades before obtaining their citizenship. The reason why so many pregnant women from Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, whatever, try to cross the border between Mexico and US every single day is precisely that. They know that no matter what happens to them, if their children are born on American soil, they will be granted American citizenship. Full stop. Do you follow me? So, what I will probably try to do as a migrant in a country with no birthright citizenship, such as Italy, is to work a few years in that nation, perhaps leaving my wife or my family in the place of origin, and then reunite with my family in our country, or migrate to another location where the citizenship laws are less restrictive and where my children will be considered citizens of the nation in all respects. And this is exactly what has been happening in Italy for decades. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people try to reach Italy, coming especially from the coasts of North Africa. But the paradox is that these people, the vast majority of them, they don't want to stay here in Italy. We take on all the negative aspects of rescuing and managing so many individuals without getting anything in return, since these guys don't want to stay in my country. They don't want to work in our nursing homes, in our hospitals, in our companies in general. But why? First, because they know that our salaries are lower compared to other European countries, but most importantly, in my opinion, they know very, very well that if you don't have Italian blood, taking Italian citizenship is a hellish and endless, torturing process. And they know that if their children are born in Italy, they will be subjected to the same inferno. So this is, my opinion, by far the most important reason. In fact, they prefer to go to countries such as France, where citizenship laws for immigrants are much less restrictive.
Young and scared, two boys French police have taken off a train coming from the Italian town of Ventimiglia. Without documents, they are forced to return to Italy. They survived a hazardous boat journey across the Mediterranean to Italy.
France is my dream country since I was a child.
Under an EU agreement, refugees can only apply for asylum in the first country of arrival, which is often Italy. But Doctors Without Borders say 80% don't want to stay there.
And I have to say that at the moment, most Italians are very, very happy with the current situation. We are happy to be just a country of passage where immigrants don't want to stay long term, but just pass through. We don't care about being by far the oldest country in the world with a monstrous shortage of workers and many other problems related to our demographic catastrophe.
Hey everybody, Peter Zine here, coming to you from Genoa, Italy. Most of the buildings are less than 1/3 lit up, typical for Italian cities writ large. Unfortunately, Italy is going through a population crash, and it's well past the point of no return.
Why? Because, as I explained in the other video that I link in the description down below, for most Italians, at the moment, in 2025, immigrants are only seen as a source of problems, not opportunities. Unlike what happens in the US, where immigrants are mostly seen as people who potentially can create jobs and build unicorn companies, here in Italy there is much more skepticism. The first thing that comes to many Italians' mind is that potentially they're criminals. If it were up to us, we would close the Mediterranean, so no ships can reach our shores.
More misery in the Mediterranean, with the second shipwreck in 2 days of an overloaded boat carrying migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. Italian Coast Guards mounted a rescue operation to try and save as many as possible of the 400 people reportedly crammed into the boat as it began sinking off the coast of the southern Italian island of Lampedusa.
So to recap, we have explained why a citizenship system like the Italian one tends to discourage long-term immigration to a certain country, and let me know in the comments if you think this is a good or a bad thing. But what about the Americans? Is such citizenship system applicable to a country like the United States, which is completely different from Italy in terms of size, population, culture, history, identity, role in the world? In my opinion, it's not, and I'll explain you why. The United States was born as a country of immigrants from other nations. During the pre-American Revolutionary period, the British practiced the so-called impressment, a phenomenon whereby the British Navy forced the people born and raised in America to work on Her Majesty's ships. This caused enormous tension between the 13 colonies and London, and one of the ways in which the colonial representatives defended themselves from this forced conscription was precisely to say, hey, we're born here, we're Americans. The soil has always been sacred to Americans, and being born on US soil has always been a huge part of American identity, a way to defend the country from its enemies. The reason why it was decided in Article 2 of the US Constitution that by law the president had to be born on American soil was exactly for this reason. Being born in America was a guarantee of loyalty to your country. For example, in the early national period, it prevented British and French agents to conspire against the young republic. Another example of this is the way immigrants are described in the United States. For example, in America, a first-generation Italian American is not a person who perhaps immigrated as a child and lived most of his or her life in the United States, but only his or her children, because they were born there in America. In Italy, we would call these sons and daughters second generation, but America is different. The discriminant is the place of birth. It doesn't matter where their family came from originally. It doesn't matter if their parents did not speak a word of English. They were born there, on that sacred soil, therefore they're Americans. Breaking this magical bond between American soil and US citizenship would be, in my opinion, extremely dangerous for a country like the United States, not a nation among nations, but a hegemonic empire which still represents the first economic and political power in the world. And speaking about this, when you have a great empire that dominates the world, you also have many enemies, and when you have many enemies, you need a young population ready for any eventuality. The main reason why the US currently has a much higher fertility rate and a much more stable average age of the population than its main competitors, China, Russia, is precisely this. Every year, millions of people arrive in the US from all over the world. Young, motivated, ready to work and, if necessary, to fight in the US military for a country that guarantees full and complete citizenship to their children. This is the secret of the United States, people full of hope arriving from all across the world and bringing energy, ideas and technologies. Google, OpenAI, Nvidia, AMD, technologies that guarantee the American dominance in the globe. Is the human capital that makes the US invincible. Breaking this bond just by decreeing, as in Italy, that you are a citizen only if one of your parents were American or after spending more than 20 years in that country, would represent, in my opinion, a serious wound at the heart of the American empire and the loss of its main advantage over the competitors. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button. See you in the next one. Ciao ciao ragazzi.